Welcome to WBC Faster Together, the LinkedIn Live series of Women Business Collaborative. And I'm Gwen Young, CEO of WBC. Happy Women's History Month once again. So WBC is an unprecedented alliance of over 80 business organizations and hundreds of business leaders building a movement to achieve equal position, pay, and power for all women in business. We do this through advocacy, collaboration, action, and accountability. And we are mobilizing thousands to create momentum and accelerate the pace of change. So I want to say and start off by saying we live our commitment to DEI, and members of our leadership, our staff, our board of directors, and our WBC champion include more than 34% people of color. And every single one of our action initiatives has DEI goals for 2025 and 2030. So please check the chat for the action initiatives through which we aim to accelerate change and join our movement at wbcollaborative.org. So each week in this series, we offer different ways to change and accelerate impact by presenting data, research, and best practices, by lifting up the power of women's voices for change, and by showcasing leaders committed to allyship, inclusivity, and driving corporate purpose. So today I'm delighted to be joined by two amazing WBC champions and leaders, Velma Delaval, Principal of Go Solutions, and Joyce Hunter, the Executive Director of the Institute for Critical Infrastructure Technology, to discuss the changing landscape of the technology sector and the critical importance of ensuring that women of color, and particularly Black women, are positioned as leaders in the tech industry. WBC has an action initiative, Women in STEM, and through that action initiative and in collaboration with our partners, Velma and Joyce, and our organizations, we built a Women Corporate Tech Executive in America report, which we published about a year and a half ago, where we gathered data research and best practices and insights of how do you rise up women leaders across tech positions, across industries. And today we're going to talk a bit about that. And as we do that, I also want to talk about another fact. We're going to talk a lot about corporate America. We're going to also talk a lot about Black women entrepreneurs and women-owned businesses. For those of you that don't know, Black women entrepreneurs generate nearly $100 billion in revenue. They're the fastest growing group of entrepreneurs in the country. And more importantly, not only is the revenue so large, but their revenues rose nearly 33% in 2023, compared to 11% rise in all women-owned businesses. So their revenue is growing quickly. Now, in tech companies, more than a third of Black women founders of tech companies are in these high growth sectors: education, financial services, and healthcare, as well as emerging industries like AI, machine learning, clean energy, and wearables. So I'm just thrilled that we've got Joyce and Velma who work in those industries. So let's talk a little bit about, throughout some stats, sort of generally to show where kind of Black women are in business and the growth, the industries they're in, how their revenues are raising. But what does this look like in the technology industry, right? What are your observations of the evolution of the sector, and where are women in areas like AI and cybersecurity? Velma, do you want to start?
Yeah, thanks so much, Gwen. Joyce, it's a pleasure to be here today. Since
Yes.
we produced that report a year and a half ago, we are starting to see a continuation of some trends that we're not too excited about. A recent McKinsey report from 2023 shows that the representation of Black women, Latina, and Native American women in the tech sector, that we're actually declining, in spite of the fact that we're seeing an increase in our share of some of these technology degrees. So people have really done a great job in terms of pursuing some of the technical degrees, but they're leaving corporate America. In that report, the same group of women were questioned about their experiences that were related, and 40% of them said that they had experienced some form of prejudice, either related to their race or their sex. And so I think that we're seeing some trends that is really related to why we're seeing such a rise in entrepreneurship. And I know Joyce has some additional statistics about what women are doing and what's happening.
Absolutely. Women are typically getting most of the technical degrees these days, as Velma had stated. And thank you very much, Gwen and WBC, for allowing us the opportunity to share some of our experiences and provide some recommendations. So in the tech field, women have dramatically increase the number of technical degrees that they're getting, but they're not getting the positions. And the technology shows, or the information shows through various studies from Forbes and from Black Enterprises, that these women are going into, or being shifted into, the traditional roles. They have these degrees, but they are automatically being sent into the human resources or education or some of the other roles that are not very technical in nature. And we feel that that's just basic, discrimination. People hire people that they're familiar with. And most of people are not familiar with African American women in those particular stages. So let's look at AI. Where we need to have a voice at the table about AI, because it's all AI is a lot of the algorithms that will determine what decisions people will make. And if you don't have women at the table making those kinds of decisions, making those kinds of inputs into the AI algorithms, you're going to have unintended results, particularly in healthcare, where a lot of the problems with women lie. And so you will find that having AI programs on the rise are very criticized for having bias. The data and algorithms are not representative or significantly consider people of color. Similar to examples are the Kodak in the 50s using white models to develop the other photography. This status also results in inaccurate conclusions, which have huge negative consequences, especially in healthcare, as I said before, and also other areas such as cyber.
So yeah, I want to kind of pick up. I know we just spoke about cyber, and Velma, I want to come back to you because you advise a lot of companies, right? And I know you throughout your career have been looking at where we can advance, Black women in technology and sectors. Like, what's exciting for you? There's always the what keeps you up at night. What are you worried about? But what does it look like right now? Because as these positions are opening up across industries, and I know where you're working now, which is what I want to hear about. Is there some energy, and how can we bring more Black women into that sector and that industry?
So right now, as you've said, I've had a long career. I first started out as a manufacturing engineer. I then became an engineering professor and a business executive in technology. I am now focused on clean energy technology and transitioning that to underserved communities where we can create more entrepreneurs, more high-paying jobs, and we can actually address some of the health disparities. We can address climate change. This is a sector, clean energy, that is huge. It's growing. What I love about it is that it allows us to empower folks that look like us. It allows us to address some of the disparities that we are concerned about. And I think it's a place where I believe we've got to start to pull more women and minorities into this. We cannot allow for this to become a place where our voices are not heard. This is an industry that people are jumping into. There are a lot of high-paying jobs that do not require that you have a formal degree. And so there's a lot of work in this space right now that I'm seeing, and it's just evolving. It's new. We're creating new entrepreneurs. I mean, new manufacturing jobs, new EV jobs for around electric vehicle. A lot of technicians are moving into this space. There's a lot of workforce training. So this is an exciting area that we are looking for people, because right now there's such a gap in a number of places that we can't afford to sit out and not be at the table. In addition to the issues with cyber and AI, there's health. I mean, we need women's voices to address issues in around breast cancer. I cannot tell you how many people I know sitting here today in my life that have breast cancer. And so I think we're at a point where we've got to message differently about the importance of bringing people that look like us into these arenas. It's not just about the jobs, it's about the passion, it's about the impact, it's about making a difference in other people's lives.
I love that. And I want to, Joyce, I want to bring you in kind of another, opportunity as we're looking at types of careers and types of pathways, right? Joyce, you were the former deputy CIO, acting CIO at USDA. You had a $4.1 billion IT budget, if I remember correctly. But given the trends in cyber, let's talk about cyber. what do you need? How do you get in there? Can we demystify what it takes to come in and be part of the ever-growing cyber community and cyber expertise?
Absolutely. First of all, you don't need a cyber degree. You don't need a computer science degree. You don't need an engineering degree. My undergraduate is in sociology, and my MBA is in marketing. So where's the IT in that?
Yeah.
And particularly in cyber, you're looking for people who can analyze. And we find that people with humanities degrees make better analysts. There are a number of career paths that are well paying that don't require a degree. AI is one of them as well. So if you're looking at starting, you start very early and you encourage people to creatively think. And that's what is missing in our school systems. We are so interested in taking these standardized tests so that you could get the federal dollars because you took a test and you were able to, make this particular grade, that we are not encouraging our young people, particularly our young women, to think creatively. Ask the questions why. Tell them, well, how do you know? And make sure that we start very young with that. Elementary, middle school. Don't wait till college. Don't wait till your middle of high school and then start talking about AI and cyber and all of those things. There are great opportunities to go down to the Amazon Innovation Center in Arlington, or even about my camp. I have a nonprofit data science camp for 14 to 18-year-olds, where we teach young women to be forthright and diplomatic. And we also recognize that they have a voice. Whenever they come into my camp, which is only in the summer, we ask them, they ask a question. I always turn it around and ask them, so how do you know? If you make a statement, back it up. So, I think we need to get off this. You got to have a scientific degree. And that is also self-discriminating as well, because if you think that way, you're going to target yourself into other areas. Go into AI, especially generative AI. As long as you can communicate, which is another thing that the camp does, we teach young people how to look at the data, how to research the data, how to interpret the data, and then stand up and how to present the data.
So I want to push a little bit on that, on kind of that building the pipeline, because I'm hearing a couple of things, right? There's, AI and cyber, where everyone's saying sort of jobs are rising, right?
Mhm.
Tell me, you talked a lot about, like, you want to solve the problems in your communities. You want to solve the problems in today. And these are the ways that you do that. And we're starting young. So we want to talk elementary school. We want to talk about it as being able to kind of solve the world's problems. We want to talk about it broader. What other thoughts and tips you have of, like, where can we go to how really build the pipeline? Because then I want to come to, once we've built that, we get the interest, what's happening in the workplace, right? What's really happening once you're in those companies or in those fields, what's happening there. But I want to look a little bit as, build the pipeline young, start as young as elementary school. Any other thoughts you both have on that?
Yeah, there was a question that you asked earlier that's linked to this, and is sort of what keeps me up at night. I think what keeps me up at night is the fact that we have people who don't even understand their value, and they don't understand that they can actually solve these problems. So, as my mother used to say, and she had many proverbs, one was, "A mind of a man makes a man." And so that applies in the sense that how you see yourself is the greatest determinant of your success. And I think we've got to teach young girls at a very early age, and we've been talking about this for 30 years, but we still have a problem with how women see themselves, how young girls see themselves. I think that begins with positive affirmations, and it also begins with history. Too many people don't understand that history did not begin 30 years ago, 50 years ago, 100 years ago. We have a long history of accomplishments of what Black women have accomplished centuries ago. And I always say, when I was an engineering professor, I would ask students to research the background to understand what contributions we made to society centuries ago. Looking back at Timbuktu in the 16th century to understand that it was a great place of learning in Mali. and looking. And so I would say to people to go read books like Dr. Alvin Van Sertima's book around Blacks in Science and We Came Before Columbus. It really talks about what people did without the internet, without phones, and under the oppression of being whipped for reading. And so look at how much we were able to accomplish in spite of the challenges. And so when I think about today, you have to start with the knowledge of what your ancestors have done because that gives you strength. So forgetting about history is one of the biggest, I think, challenges that we face today, is that we're encouraged not to learn history, but we need to do the exact opposite, is go back. And I can look at the strength of my mother and my grandmother and my great grandmother and all of the great fishermen from the Bahamas that were very wise. And so I think we have to start with the headset of getting people to understand that they can do, and then we have to teach them that they must do, because we need their voices at the table, like Joyce and you, Gwen, have talked about. We can't afford to be absent, otherwise we're going to have solutions that do not solve our problems completely. So I think it's also teaching young girls the power of failing fast, that you're going to make mistakes, that's okay, that it's a great part of learning, and get them used to experimenting and knowing what it feels like to have success. So summer camps, and during the pandemic, there were so many online free resources that we could Google that would not only teach students small projects to do at home, but it would also help parents and champions to figure out, I don't need to have a degree in science in order to work with my 5-year-old, And so I think we've got to focus very young on those simple principles of history, mindset, can-do attitude, and hands-on kinds of programs that are helping young people understand, because our pipeline, as we all know, thins out pretty quickly when we get to, if you don't have those experiences and those degrees by the time you're in the middle school and high school, they're pretty hard to get. Luckily, we've got some additional pathways that you can get into AI and cyber without that. But I think that we've got to get folks still focus on the early part of the pipeline. And then when we get to corporate America, when we get to the place where a person is an individual contributor and they're trying to get promoted to a manager, that's where we see the biggest drop off in the pipeline. Statistically, we see for 100 men that get promoted from an individual contributor to a manager, we only see 52 women. And so that's where we have a major problem in the pipeline. It's the broken rung, again, where we need resources in corporate to really focus around the strengths of those talented women, to help them understand what it looks like to be successful, and to provide the sponsors and the mentors, not just the mentors, but the sponsors. And we talk so much about this, Gwen, in our report from 2022, all of the advice from tech women, executive tech women, their voices really talk about what do you need to do at every stage of this pipeline, whether you're a sponsor, whether you're a parent, whether you're a teacher, whether you're in corporate America, and for the venture capital community. We just laid out the numbers in terms of the kind of impact we're bringing as Black women in tech. And so we need people to really focus on the value that we bring, and we need to reinforce that value, I think, through our activities across the pipeline.
And so a lot of our youth, I mean, you look at a lot of the reports, and there's been no change in the share of Black female workers in STEM since 2016. That's sad. I mean, it's almost 10 years, and there has been no remarkable change in even though women now earn a majority of the undergraduate and advanced degrees. We also need to ensure that our young women see people like us in their schools, in their elementary schools. Yeah. So if I don't know whether they still have, my grandchildren are teenagers now, so I don't know at the elementary school level or the middle school level whether they still have show and tell or career day or days in which we can actually go and talks to the students about our careers, what we're doing, how we got there, and provide them with the face of the future. I always go back to what Martin Luther King told Nichelle Nichols: don't quit Star Trek. Because if you quit Star Trek, then nobody else will see themselves in that vein as they move forward. And you talk to Mae Jemison, and you talk to a lot of the astronauts, and what do they say? Nichelle Nichols inspired them, because they saw somebody that looked like them in that position. And we've got to do the same thing. Each one help one.
So you both sort of gave a big call to action, and this is, we're running up against time. In fact, we're right at time, but I want to give you a chance to say, it's a lot in here, a lot that we've talked about in a short period of time. But what's your one sentence? What's your one call to action to the audience today? Joyce, do you want to start, and then Velma?
Yes, I said it before. Failure to confront is permission to continue.
Perfect.
If you continue to allow things to go on the way they are, things will always stay the same.
And I would add to some comments around folks that are focused on the early part of the pipeline, is that make sure that we're developing problem sets that these students care about. Make it about them and their communities, and allow them to partner with people in the community so that they're doing things that matter to them. And lastly, but most importantly, I would say to the young women who are thinking about pathways, bet on yourself.
Yes.
Bet on yourself.
I love that. Bet on yourself. Well, thank you both. Unfortunately, we have to close this out today, but thank you both for all of the information. Thank you both for your leadership. And I love leaving us with, bet on yourself. And for the audience, we invite you to wbcollaborative.org to learn more about our initiatives to increase women in the C-suite and boardroom, to address the underrepresentation of women in STEM and other fields. And also, we're really focused on building up women-owned businesses and the access to capital. And basically to advance a pipeline of women leaders that are going to bring gender and pay equity, diversity, equity, inclusion to the business landscape. So join us weekly